from the home page, you right-click Supervisor Studies. Right-click on your studies and go to the questions page. And you right-click on your question and choose Ascribe Coder. So when you first log in, this is what your screen will look like. And I'm going to go a little bit over the layout of the screen. First, I want to highlight this rainbow color icon right here. This is our navigation icon. We are we're getting away from the right-click navigation menu. So if you want to navigate out of Ascribe Coder or go to any other place in Ascribe or even log off, you use the navigation icon. Just simply click on it and it'll bring up your menu. This here is our response pane. And here are the tools that control the response pane. This is our response pane toolbar. These two buttons here are our coding modes. The three dots represent the multi-response coding mode. The single dot is the single response coding mode. We're going to focus on the multi-response coding mode for this demonstration. This is our codebook pane, and these are the tools that control the codebook pane. And down here at the bottom where you see the question, this is our question pane. It gives us all of our information, our study information. We also have hyperlinks. If we click on this hyperlink, it'll bring up all of our information on the study. Moving kind of slow. Question properties, if you want to change the properties of our question, you can click on that and make those changes. And this is all of our question information. If you click on any one of these hyperlinks, the question text, the type of question, the label, or the question ID, it will bring up our question information. These panes are adjustable, so we can resize these by using the resizer bar. You can adjust the question pane. You can also hide it by clicking on the link, clicking on this link here, and it closes it. And you'll see questions, and if you want to open it, just click on questions in the room. You'll be able to see the information in your question pane. You can adjust the codebook as well. And if you're only in here working on your codebook, I apologize for the way I sound. I have a cold, so my voice sounds pretty bad right now, so I apologize for that. If you're working only on the codebook, you can close out the response pane by clicking this button here, and you can just make your changes to codebook without having your response pane displayed. So to render responses, we start with our search icon. So you click on the search icon and bring up the search dialog box. And if you leave this text box empty and the show only box empty and hit go, it'll render both coded and uncoded responses. So you'll return all of your responses. And I'm going to close this down. So the first thing is applying codes. We have 4 ways of applying codes in Ascribe Coder. The first is dragging and dropping. So you can click on the code and drag it to a response and let it go and apply that code to the response. And to do that, you want to either bring your mouse behind the code description or in front of it to when you see the double arrows, click and drag it over and drop it and apply the code. Dragging and dropping is sort of a one and done thing. It only applies to the response that you're dragging the code to. The next is selecting responses and clicking on the code. So if I wanted to select all of these responses and code them into don't know, just simply click don't know, and the code is applied to all of these responses. And to deselect the responses, you simply click on the response, or you can right-click and choose deselect all. The next method of applying the code is using our hyperlinks. So I'm going to do a search for price. And hyperlinks are when codes in the code book have an expression, and let me demonstrate, show that. When you have expressions for your codes, right now you see I have price, expensive, and cost too much as a regular expression for my expensive price code. So what Ascribe does is searches the responses, and any response that matches this expression, it'll create a hyperlink on that response. And then also, if you hover over it, it'll suggest the code that this response is matching. So if I want to apply expensive price to these responses, I simply click on the response. Anytime you see a response that's underlined, it has that response matches a regular expression, and it has a hyperlink to the code that the expression matches. And to apply that code, just simply click on the hyperlink. The fourth method of applying the code is using our selected apply selected codes button, which you'll see right here is this little target. And to enable that, you click on the response setting, and under responses, you select apply selected codes. So if I remove it, it goes away. Get rid of that. If I check it again, you see it appear. So the target is the apply selected codes button. And what I would do is go through and select whatever codes that I want to apply to a response, click the target, and apply it. And just say I can apply more than one code. I can select multiple codes and just click. And those codes, all of the codes that I have selected will be applied to the response. To deselect codes, you just simply click on them or right click and do deselect all. The next thing we want to talk about is removing codes. So one way to remove a code is to simply right click on the code. If you're just removing one code, and select remove this code, and it removes it. If I wanted to remove multiple codes, I would click the code to select them, right click on any one of the codes, choose remove this code, and all selected codes. And I'll get this prompt telling me that, hey, you're removing 2 codes for other residue mentions and 2 codes for not make hair manageable. If I want to remove them, click remove codes, and the codes are removed. The next method is simply clicking on the code and dragging it over to the code book. And you'll get this prompt. And you hit OK saying you want to remove your code. And I know if you're removing a single code, that can be a little bit annoying, and every time you want to remove just one code, you're going to get this prompt. And you can get rid of that simply by clicking on the response settings, going to the Apply Codes tab, and removing prompt for confirmation when removing a single code. And while you're there, you can also select Remove Code button. This is our next method of removing a code from a response. And you'll see the Remove Code button is this trash can icon. So I can go through and just simply click the trash can to remove codes from a response. Next, I want to talk about swapping codes. So let's say I wanted to swap sticky hair for not control, eliminate when and static. I can select my code here in my response, and then select the code that I want to change it to in my code book, right click, choose swap, and then I can swap, if I'm only swapping one code, choose swap this code. If you're swapping more than one, this code and all selected codes. You'll get the confirmation and you can swap the code. The next method of swapping the code will simply be selecting the codes that you want to swap in the responses and dragging the code that you want to replace it with over to the highlighted code, and you can swap you can swap that way. Do we have any questions so far?
No, Antoine.
Okay. So let me bring up I'm going to talk a little bit about using the search icon and searching for responses. And so if you leave currently in regular and review responses, if you're using the expression test and you're searching for responses, you have to enter in a period to render responses. That's not the case with the search icon in Ascribe Coder. You don't need to enter in anything to bring up all of your responses. You just simply open up the search box and hit go, and it'll render all of your coded and uncoded responses. If you want to search for a text, simply enter in the text, and it'll search for it, and it'll highlight your search criteria in red, unless the text that you're searching for matches a hyperlink, and it will not be highlighted in red. Also, if you want to use expressions, you have to check this box here to enable regular expressions. Without it checked, so if I want to search for hair and price, select regular expression, hit go, and it'll bring up all of my price and hair comments. But without regular expression selected, the search box is only a search box. It will not accept regular expressions. So right now I didn't bring up anything because it's looking for a text that says hair, pipe bar, price. When searching, we can search for both coded and uncoded responses by leaving this field blank. You can search for uncoded responses, coded responses with any code applied, or you can select the code. You can also search for regular expressions. So we have quite a few options for rendering searches. Also, we can do a new search. We can search for a single respondent. So this works good if you're working in a shared question and you want to code that respondent's answer for all of the questions that they answered. You can simply do single respondent search and hit, and it'll bring up single respondents. This next icon here is our search again. So instead of bringing up a search box every time you want to search for something, your search sticks. So if I wanted to search for uncoded responses for hair, and I just start applying codes to these responses, and just say I apply codes to all of these responses here. And now I want to only see my uncoded responses again. Instead of bringing up the search dialog, I can simply hit search again. And it'll return, it'll look for my last search and render the responses matching my last search. select the search again icon. So you can continue working instead of bringing up this search box all the time. The next icon is our print icon, which allows us to print our responses, and the responses will print exactly the way you're displaying them on the screen. So if you're displaying your question ID, your respondent ID, notes, translations, whatever you're displaying on the screen is what will be printed out. You have the option of printing just a few responses that you may select, printing all of the responses that are being displayed on your screen, all of the responses for the questions, the current questions you're working in. So if you're working in a shared question, you can print all of the responses for that shared code book, and you can print all of the responses for your entire study, as well as selecting codes in your code book and just printing those responses. And the formats are Excel and Word. This is our response settings icon, and it controls what we see in our responses pane. This is our apply selected codes button. If I want to do quality reviewing of my coding, here's my coding quality icon. It's a marker response quality review. I just simply click the icon and it'll check the circle. I can display my study ID, question ID, translations, notes, and transcriptions. If I'm only viewing translations, notes, and transcriptions, I'll enable it here. But if I want to edit those fields, you need to select them over here. And this allows you to edit those fields. This is our translation icon in the box for the translations. This is the transcription, and this is the note. And here we can, if we're related responses, we can set the criteria for how we want the related responses to be seen in the response pane. We can also select how we want the codes that are applied to show up in the response pane. So right now, I'm only showing my code description. I can have my output code value, the username, the date, and the coding method, or the BCS coding confidence score if I'm using the ACM, all being displayed.
Antoine, when you get back to it, can you re-explain quality review, the green check mark?
Okay. So currently in review responses, if you quality review a response, you will right-click on it and mark it as reviewed, and it will change the respondent ID into red. That's not the case in the Ascribe coder. The respondent ID being red has nothing to do with the coder verbatim being quality reviewed or not. That's just simply something that users add to a way to make the respondent ID stick out. So if you don't want your respondent ID red, you can click on the Appearance tab and just deselect it, and it'll be black. Or change it to red. If you want to quality review a coded response, so if I coded this response here and I came in here and I reviewed it and I said everything was okay with this response and I want to make it quality reviewed, I simply click the circle here. This is the coding quality icon. And to enable it, you click on Responses, Settings, on the Responses tab, and check Coding Quality. You also can right-click on a response and choose Edit and quality review it here as well. And in the Ascribe coder, we have the ability to quality review verbatim, translation, transcriptions, and notes, as well as quality review the coding. Does that answer that question, Julie?
I'm checking to see if that answers the question. Antoine, also there's a way to select and deselect multiples for quality reviewing. Is there?
Yes, it is. If I wanted to quality review all of the responses that I'm showing on my screen right now, I can right-click and choose Select All, and it'll highlight all of my responses. Right-click on any selected response and go to Set Selected Responses as Quality Reviewed or Verbatim Reviewed. Whatever type of review I want to do, I have the ability to do it here. And you can see now all of my responses that I'm displaying have been set as quality reviewed.
Okay, and you are not showing right now any translation or transcription, and that's fine, but the question is, well, how would you know which has been quality reviewed? So in other words, that can you, and then can you show how those are what that would look like? Thank you.
So right now I'm showing my translation. And if we had a translation in this text box and I wanted to approve it, I can simply click the icon in front of it and the A becomes highlighted green. So when your translation has been reviewed, it's highlighted green. The translation icon will be in front of the box and it's highlighted green. That's how you'll be able to tell that the translation has been quality reviewed. If you quality review a verbatim, the little text box icon right before the response, you simply click that. If that's green, that means the verbatim has been quality reviewed for anyone who needs to quality review their verbatims. The same thing applies for transcription. If the transcription icon is highlighted green, that means the transcription has been quality reviewed.
Okay.
And the notes.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I think everybody understands where you're going with it, so that's good. Antoine, could you take a minute and show us the single coding? The single response coding window,
Sure.
Just to give people just a quick overview, nothing real in depth, because there isn't that much to it.
So to go to the single response coding window, you simply click on this icon here. And to render responses, you will have to click either one of these buttons. And it will return a response. And right now, this is my verbatim response to this question, and I have a related question going, and it's showing those responses here because I have include related responses. So if you're relating the question, you will see it down here. If I don't want to show that, I'll just simply deselect it and refresh my screen and it'll appear. And to apply codes, if you have a hyperlink, you apply code that way. The ways of applying codes are still the same. We are not, we don't double click to apply a code. It's either dragging and dropping or clicking on a code because you're only showing one response, so you don't need to select a response. If you just click on the code, it will apply code or using a hyperlink. So this is pretty much it for the single response coding interface. Or you also can apply codes by the number, by entering in the output value and hitting enter, and that code will apply. Does that answer their questions, Julie?
Yes, yes it does.
Okay. So the next icon here is our filters and sorting icon. This allows us to, the filter tab, we can sort filters on translation, transcription, and notes. We can sort filters on whether responses, verbatim, or anything has been quality reviewed. We can set filter by the coding method, by date, or even by coders. And if you want to set a filter by a question, you simply click where it says change, and select your question, move it over to the right, apply your filter, and hit OK. And we have a clear all filter buttons that removes all the filters at one time. The sorting tab allows us to sort how responses are being displayed in the response pane. We have numerous options of sorting the responses. Right now, I'm showing verbatim length and then by verbatim, but you have quite a few responses. Quite a few options to choose how you want to sort your responses, or how you want them to be displayed in the response pane. And we also have the ability to reverse the sort. This next icon here is our questions icon, and this allows us to work in a shared code book. So I'm going to go out into a question that's actually shared to demonstrate that. So right now I'm in QE11_1, and it's shared with 6 other questions. I can choose to just code a couple of the questions that are shared with, or code in all of them. So this is a nice feature that's been introduced. Currently in review responses, you're either coding one question at a time, or you're coding all of the shared code books. But now we have the ability to choose which questions we want to code. And whatever question you're working on, that information will be displayed down here. The next thing I want to talk about is the code duplicates feature. So we can code multiple responses that syntax match exactly at one time by enabling the code duplicates feature. So you would click on your response settings, go to Apply Codes tab, select Code Duplicates. Now when I go through the code Dixie, it's going to apply it. You see it said it last coded one response and one duplicate. So it coded both of my Dixie mentions at one time. It works with dragging and dropping. It works with the hyperlink. So any coding method you use, if you have code duplicates on, it will apply that code to the duplicate response if the syntax matches exactly. Also, if you remove a code from a response and you have code duplicates on, it'll apply that way as well. So right now, I just remove none, nothing from all of my none responses.
Antoine, while you're showing that code duplicates, I just want to take a minute to ask you about the paging indicator at the top of the screen. Do you want to just mention what's going on with that?
I was just getting ready to talk about that. Thanks, Judy. So currently in Ascribe Coder, we can display up to 1,000 responses at one time. So right now, I have 1,135 responses in these shared questions, but I can only display 1,000. Or I can even limit that, say if I wanted to limit it to 300. I can limit that search to 300. And to render the rest of the responses, our search again button becomes a paging button. So if I want to see responses 301 to 600, I'll simply click the search again button, and you will see 2 of 4. So let's say I'm on page 2 of 4. So when you have more than 1,000 responses, or if you set a limit to the amount of responses you display and you have more responses than that limit, the paging feature will be enabled, and the search again button becomes the page button. You just simply click the page button to view all of your responses from page to page. And once you're on the last page, if you click it again, it'll take you back to page 1. I want to talk a little bit about the response status bar here at the top. Right here at the top, this tells us, gives us all of the information that's what we're displaying on our screen. So right now, I'm displaying 300 responses, and that's the second number. You see the first number is 0. The first number represents the number of responses that I have selected. So as I go through and select responses, that number changes, and it'll tell me now I have 6 of 300 responses selected. And the same thing goes for codes. I have 62 codes applied to the responses that I'm displaying on my screen. And when I start selecting them, now it's telling me I have 3 of the 62 codes selected. If I have a filter, if I hover over the word filter, it'll tell me what filter that I'm showing. The same thing with sort, it'll tell me how I have my sort set. Because I have code duplicates on, when I last coded none, it showed that I last coded 1 response manually, which was this one, and I coded 61 duplicates. The numbers here, I'm showing 300 responses out of the 1,135 responses total in the shared questions, and it gives you the percentage. This here represents the respondents. So I have 255 respondents out of 750. And this last number here gives us the total study respondents. So this is the response status bar here, and this displays all of that information at the top for us. Julie, are there any other questions?
Yes, if we can switch gears just a little bit. Someone asked how they could create a code from a verbatim.
How they can create a code from a verbatim?
Yeah, and you know, so the highlighting of text in a verbatim and then going over and insert code.
Right.
Can you demonstrate that?
So right now I'm in Internet Explorer, so I have the ability to highlight a response. If I want to create a code, come over, right-click and insert code. And now you see the text that I highlighted being displayed. And simply hit OK, and it'll create that code. So that's how we can create a code from a verbatim. It didn't let me highlight this one. Since we're talking about, I'm on the code book, I want to mention, with our code book, there are 2 features for the code book. It's either 2 modes. It works in locked and either unlocked. So when you're locked, as you can see, you can code responses when it's locked. You can add codes when it's locked, but you cannot change the structure of the code book. If you want to change the structure of the code book, you need to unlock the code book to do so. And to unlock the code book, you have to have supervisor privileges. If you only have coder privileges, you will not be able to unlock the code book. Do we have any other questions?
Yes, okay. The idea of when you added those codes at the top, Best and Dixie, okay, somebody noticed, well, like your brand name's net was in the 201s, okay, so why are we starting with 1 and 2 at the top?
When you're adding codes, it goes to the next available code. It applies the output value for the next available code. And since number 1 wasn't used, that's why I suggested number 1. But Julie, is that being changed? I think that was a discussion for possibly changing that.
Right, we're still kind of working that out, I would say.
Okay.
So yeah, we're still discussing the best way to handle when you're adding a code, what the number should be. Because it depends on a lot of factors of nets and no duplicates and so forth. But for right now, that's what's going on.
Okay.
Also, Antoine, I'm sorry, are you in the middle of explaining something? Because I have another question.
No, go ahead.
Time. Okay, let me find it here. Okay. All right, in review responses, we had the right-click add to note when part of the verbatim is selected. Can you show how we add notes here?
Yes. To add a note, first you need to enable the notes field under the edit box. And if you're using Internet Explorer, you could highlight a response and drag and drop it to the notes. Excuse me. Or you could manually add a note just by simply clicking on the notes field. If you're using Chrome, you have to you can highlight the response and Control C and then Control V to paste it in. So you could either, to add a note, you have to enable the ability to edit the notes under response settings, responses, and clicking notes under the edit selection. And then you can simply click and type in your note manually, or highlight the response, Control C, Control V if you're in Chrome, highlight and drag and drop if you are in, if you're using Internet Explorer to create it to a note. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yes. And we're getting close to wrapping the session up. So if anybody has any other questions, please go ahead and type them in the chat box, and we'll be glad to answer them for you. Antoine, while we're waiting a minute to see if there's any more questions, do you want to just talk a little bit about locking and unlocking the code book and what that means? Like what options are available if the code book is locked?
Yes. So again, when the code book is locked, you can add codes. And you can code responses when the code book is locked. When the code book becomes unlocked, you have the ability to move the structure of the code. So if I wanted to move this dicky down here, I can use the move handle to move it. I also can select codes to move by clicking on the code, coming to wherever I want to move it, right-click, and choose Move Selection. If I'm moving it below a code, the only option would be Move Below. If I'm moving it to a net, I have the option to move my selection below the net or either into the net. So into the net, it would become a child of the net. If I wanted to move it below the net, it would be on the same level as my net.
While you're talking about the code book, can you show where we would see duplicate codes?
Yes. 1 second. So I have quite a few. I have a couple of duplicate codes in my code book. And to display duplicate codes, are they talking about duplicate codes that we created in the code book or coding duplicate responses?
I'm sorry. No, over on the code book side to say duplicate. Yeah, the codebook side? Tools?
So right, I have two codes for Dixie. So this icon here is our codebook 2 icon. And we have a tab here that says duplicate, and it's highlighted. So anytime we have a duplicate, whether it be input, output code, description, or regular expression, when you click on the codebook tools, the duplicate tab would be highlighted, let you know like, hey, you have a duplicate. And then down here, where you have the duplicate would be highlighted. So right now it's telling me I have two codes that have this Dixie. And if I wanted to change it, I can right-click on my code to the properties and just change it. And since I changed it, if I hit update, now it's showing that I don't have any duplicates.
Okay, that's good. And somebody asked a question about they see the sessions being recorded, and they want to know, will we have access to it?
Yes, we are recording all of the sessions, and we are currently working on getting those recordings published. And as soon as we have them available, we'll be posting it on the home page of Ascribe, letting the users know where they can access the sessions. I think I saw another question about removing codes.
Yeah, if you want to demo that real quick,
Okay.
pulling it over to the codebook side, they just want to make sure they didn't actually have to put it back in the codebook.
No, you don't have to put it back in the codebook. You simply just click on your code and drag it over to the codebook side, and it'll remove it. And because I have duplicates on, it applies to all of my duplicate responses. You just simply move it over, and it goes away. You don't have to physically drag it. You don't have to drag it over here to the code book or even bring it to a specific code. Just as long as you move it across from the response pane, part of it crosses over to the code book pane, you release it, and it'll remove your response. It'll remove that code from the response.
Okay, that answers that, and I don't have any other questions in the chat window right now.
Okay. So this concludes the Coding Basics webinar for Ascribe Coder. Thank you for your time. We will be conducting more webinars throughout the month of March, as well as in April, May, and June. We'll probably be going up until doing these type of webinars up until August, until all of our updates are being released. You can sign on for these sessions on the home page by clicking on the link. And again, as soon as we get these recordings published, we will post a note on the home page letting everyone know that the recordings are available. And if you have any questions, you can send your questions to support. And that's support@languagelogic.net, and they'll answer any questions you have about Ascribe Coder. We also want to let you guys know that we are offering individual training sessions for teams. If you want to have a training session for your team, you can contact Julie, Laura, or myself, and we'll get that scheduled. Thanks again for attending this webinar, and this is the Ascribe Coder Coding Basics webinar. Thank you again.